Welcome in. This is The Spread. I am Cameron Tarrant. With me, as always, co-host SoCon John Hooper. Here in this new year, 2021. John, we made it. We somehow survived 2020, and we're 7 days into 2021, and it's already crazy, crazier than last year. Yeah, it's already shooting up to be turning up to be a pretty interesting year already. But glad we're back here on the spread tonight. Missed the past couple of weeks just because of holidays and things like that. But getting back here tonight, going to talk some football, college football. Going to get into NFL playoffs starting this weekend. And John, some really good basketball here locally in the Palmetto State that we can talk about too. Big wins. Clemson really playing well. Furman playing well. Wofford has been playing well. I think dropped a game this week though. Last night.
Yeah, UNC Greensboro, who probably played maybe their best half of basketball at least last night in the second half against Wofford. I think they scored 49 points, which is, and shot the ball really well. So very good game. I thought Chattanooga Sanford was also a good game where Chattanooga only had like 7 players dressed, I think, because of but they still managed to get the win over Sanford. And so 2 pretty good games, a lot canceled because of COVID-19. I think there were 3 games canceled. Furman Western, ETSU had a game canceled, and I believe the Citadel, who was yet to play a conference game yet, has had like 3 games canceled, and I think a 4th coming up this weekend.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit coming up. But John, the season, college football season, did not end the way that people here in South Carolina would have preferred it to end. Both the college football playoff semifinal games, blowouts. And just huge statements by both Alabama and Ohio State, which is going to be an interesting matchup in the national championship game. But let's actually go to the Rose Bowl game that was being played in Texas. Alabama, Notre Dame, the 1 and 4 seeds. And it turned out just like I think a lot of us expected to, with Alabama winning handedly over the Irish.
Yeah, there were a few times in the first half where I think if Notre Dame had, made a play here or there, they could have maybe stayed in the game.
Yeah.
But it's just so tough to stop. Alabama's offense has been a machine with Devontae Smith and what Mac Jones has really done. And they had 3 guys that were Heisman Trophy candidates.
Which is insane. It's insane.
One offense.
It's absolutely insane.
I've ever seen that.
Not 3. Now we've had teammates on. I think of Reggie Bush,
right,
Matt Leinart, but to have 3 guys on the same side of the ball, all Heisman Trophy candidates, is absolutely crazy. And give props. Devontae Smith had a huge year. Rightfully deserves the Heisman. I'm not gonna discount his victory in that in any way. His story is incredible of where he came from and how he got to this point. Think about it. This kid, he's had to start. He's had to sit on the bench behind some really good wide receivers that have come through that Alabama program. And
I almost wonder if if Waddle doesn't have the injury.
If he doesn't have
if Smith wins the Heisman, because a lot of the hype was, and rightfully so, around Waddle because he was just that good of a playmaker.
Yeah.
But when he went out, they had to have another guy step up, and Devontae Smith makes you wonder how good Alabama's offense actually would have been if Waddle hadn't got hurt.
It had been crazy. You might have had 4 guys that were Heisman,
right?
But
not even last year's LSU team could do that.
Yeah.
So it was an impressive. It's been an impressive, despite everything, I think it's been an impressive season for Alabama, despite all the interruptions and distractions. And
they just, they just have kind of just rolled through their schedule. I mean, there really hasn't been one game that, I mean, other than maybe the Florida game in the SEC championship where Florida sort of made a run there at the end to make it close. I mean, other than that, I really can't.
The Ole Miss game early, defensively, there was a lot to be desired, I think.
And I think that's one thing, if we have to talk honestly about Alabama, that's their one sort of hiccup is on the defensive side. They're not very good, not what we're used to from an Alabama Nick Saban defense.
Well, and that was one of the criticisms we had a little bit against Ohio State.
Yeah,
early in the season. So I, looking at it on paper, I expected it to be a pretty high scoring game. Of course, I'm probably going to be wrong. It'll probably be like 9-6 now, but I mean, you would think, with all like Sermon and Najee Harris for Alabama, you would think, so many offensive weapons
you would think
going into that game. And, the funny thing is, it's hard to really name a guy that stands on either defense. Whereas last year, that wasn't the case at least for Ohio State. Their defensive backfield was as good as any.
And I'll say, for Ohio State, Shaun Wade, who is probably one of the better cornerbacks in the nation, it's probably the best cornerback in the Big Ten, or at least one of them, got absolutely burned by Cornell Powell. If there was one bright spot for Clemson, it was the play of Cornell Powell in that game. Obviously, it didn't make much of a difference. Clemson getting just absolutely steamrolled by Justin Fields and that Ohio State offense. Trey Sermon, you mentioned him. Chris Olave had a big night. Mm-hmm. But we were talking about it earlier today, John. The thing that really hurt Clemson, and we've seen it hurt Clemson in years past, is if teams have really good tight end play. Mm-hmm. That's been a concern for Clemson. I go back to that Pittsburgh game in the regular season a few years ago. Teams like that can get the ball to their tight ends have been a bit of a concern for the Tigers, and obviously it hurt them pretty badly in New Orleans last weekend.
Was the first Notre Dame game.
Yeah.
They had the tight ends stepped up and made some big catches in that game. And I don't know what, I'm not a defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator. I don't know what they're picking up on where, they're leaving. I would imagine that it has something to do with how they're blitzing. And they're leaving the guy wide open, over the middle. But you've seen teams over the past few years go away from throwing to tight ends, which is kind of like the fullback in college football. That fullbacks become more of like an H-back now. So I think it's a position that got a little bit of, I guess, a revitalization this year, as you saw teams start to use tight end. I thought Indiana did a great job of using their tight ends throughout the season.
I mean, look at Florida. Florida with Kyle Pitts.
You're also seeing a lot of guys now to create mismatches. I go back to Furman, to take a tall wide receiver and put them at tight end.
Yeah. Which is essentially what the tight end position has become.
Right. So, and a little bit you're not seeing guys with the same type body at fullback. You're seeing guys that are H-back, they're not huge. They're guys that can make plays out of the backfield. They're a safety valve if you need it as a quarterback. They're extra blocker, but they're not like the fullback that was, just put in there in short yardage situations.
They're no longer any Mike Allstotts.
Right. Yeah. You're not having Boomer just make the sound effects with his mouth or whatever, fullbacks. But they're just more when I was growing up, Florida State had some great ones. What was the guy's name? Greg, what's his name that just obliterated people? and they was it Greg Wilton, maybe Walker or something, but Natron Means at North Carolina was a good one. There have been some really good fullbacks at Furman. I mean, Jerome Felton is a good example of a guy that was like 260, in the backfield, or 245. Guys, you don't see guys like that anymore. They're more like 220, 225 that are pretty quick, can catch the ball, and can do a lot of different things. So, gone are the days, like you said, of a Mike Allstott.
Yeah. The one thing that was surprising, a little surprising, I guess it was surprising. If you're a true Clemson fan and you sort of watched this team, you sort of felt leading up to this game that the defense had some concerns, maybe had some holes. They'd kind of shown some things, but I did not expect it to get as bad as it did on last Friday. I mean, Justin Fields absolutely sliced and diced that secondary. Darian Kendrick, who was coming into the year supposed to be one of the best corners in the country, just got absolutely outplayed. Was in wrong positions all night. It never even felt that Clemson was lined up at the snap of the ball. I don't know if Brent Venables was getting the play in too late or what was happening, but it just never did seem like Clemson was fully ready at any point in the game defensively.
Yeah, and you wonder about that, and it's kind of funny that you mentioned that. It seemed like, for the Ohio State to have mentioned Clemson being always a step ahead, it always seemed like, Ohio State in that game was a step ahead of Clemson.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like obviously there was any play stealing going on or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, if you're just watching the game, it always seemed like they were a step ahead offensively to what Clemson was trying to do. And I mean, it really hurt. Obviously, I think it hurt when Skalski went out. I think he's been a really, past Clemson defenses could maybe overcome losing a guy like that. But I mean, we saw how much it affected them in the national championship last year when they lost Skalski. So he's been a really key component for that Clemson defense for a couple of years now. And not having him out there in the second half, I mean, that was big to me, because that took away a piece off the board for Clemson, and that even allowed Ohio State a little bit more comfort in what they were able to do downfield. Is they didn't have to worry about Skalski coming out of blitz or where he was. So that allowed them more freedom, I think.
It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence now has made his announcement he's going to the NFL draft. That opens the door. It'll be DJ Uiagalelei,
a.k.a. Jacksonville.
Yeah, yeah, right. We presume Jacksonville with the number one pick will take him. That sets it up. It's going to be DJ's team next year, and they're young. Look, this Clemson team's very young. Hopefully they can get some things fixed, get some guys back and healthy next year, and maybe make a run at it again next year. It'll be tougher next year. They're going to be missing a lot of pieces, especially on the offensive side of the ball now. So definitely going to be challenging.
I mean, how many of those guys on the offensive line are coming back? I mean, that makes a big difference. You'll probably be okay at running back without having anything in front of me. I think Lynn J. Dixon would probably be the guy.
Lynn J., at times, Lynn J. had better performances than Travis Etienne did.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, and he's every bit as fast, if not a little bit faster. So I look forward to seeing him. He's a little bit more like Ohio State Sermon in a way, in that way, kind of his explosiveness. Not that Etienne wasn't. I just think Etienne did a good job of knowing like how to follow blocks and when to be explosive, whereas like Lynn J. Dixon he just runs like that naturally. So it's just going to be like he's shot out of a cannon or something, like sort of like I felt like Sermon was when he got the ball against Northwestern or Clemson in the final two games. He's really, if he could have put that together through the first 5 games, I mean, who knows? He could have had a season if he'd had a full season, he might have been a Heisman candidate.
Yeah, he might have. Who knows? Initial thoughts for this national championship game. You kind of touched on it a little bit. Could be a very high-scoring game, and I feel like it might. I kind of agree with you there. Honestly, this kind of the way both defenses have sort of played at times this year, and the way how good both offenses are, it really is going to feel like a first one
like a basketball game, basketball score.
First one to 50, who has the ball last? But of course, like you said, also we could be totally wrong, and this could end up being a low-scoring defensive game for some reason.
I think it'll be a very exciting game to watch.
Yeah, it will be.
I guess not really having a rooting interest, I'll be interested to see it. You watch more of like the scheme and how the coaches approach the game rather than, like if you are a Clemson fan or something, you're rooting it. So I think that part of it's interesting to see, how Alabama goes about maybe slowing down Fields a little bit, and maybe taking away his running ability or, making him one-dimensional. Whereas, Mac Jones, I think, is a guy that he probably doesn't get enough credit for his mobility, but he can be mobile. He's not Fields, obviously, but he is a guy that can get yards with his legs. And, I don't think he's a one-dimensional quarterback by just being a pocket passer, although that's what he's labeled.
Interesting. It's the second year in a row we'll have the 1 seed versus the 3 seed in the national championship. And what is this, the 6th year of the playoffs or 7th year? No.
6 year.
I think it's 6th or 7th. 3 seed has ever won the whole thing. So Ohio State.
Yeah, that's right.
Ohio State will be trying to be the first 3 seed to win it all.
To buck the trend, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've had 1s, 2s, and 4s have all won it. No, a 3 seed has never won it. So this will be an interesting matchup.
So they have faced Ohio State and Alabama played what? How many?
That was That was the first playoff. I believe that was 2014.
Okay.
Was the first
was that when
playoff.
Cardale Jones was the quarterback?
Yeah, and Ohio State was the 4 seed that year. Alabama the 1 seed, and they played in the semifinal game.
That's right.
And Ohio State, Ezekiel Elliott ended up having a big day in that game.
That was a good game.
It was a good game. And then, the national championship, that game, Ohio State and Oregon was a very good game that year as well.
That was a good game as well. Because what was it? The guy that was had the initials, was it DAT or something for Oregon? That was that real fast running back.
What Darren Thomas was it? Darren Thomas was there, I believe. Was that not the? I thought that was the year that Oregon played Auburn. I thought Mariota. I thought Mariota was quarterback for Oregon on that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You're thinking that would have been what, 2010, 9 or 10?
Yeah.
Because Cam Newton was Auburn's quarterback.
Yeah.
So Auburn, Florida State would have played what in the first?
Auburn, Florida State was 2013. That was the last BCS national championship.
Yeah, because that was the year Auburn had those crazy 2 wins against Georgia. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're I still think it's going to be high scoring. I mean,
I do too.
They have athletes on both sides of the ball, but I think it's really an unconventional Alabama team. Really, the past 2 years because they've been so good offensively.
Yeah.
As opposed to what you normally expect out of Alabama as defensively, from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. I obviously don't have a stake in the game, and we'll just watch it as a curious football fan myself.
I mean, part of me hopes Alabama wins, and then part of me was like, well, then you have to, listen to all the Alabama fans.
Yeah. But if Ohio State wins, look, it's just a reality. We live here in South Carolina. There are a lot of Ohio State fans in South Carolina that we have to listen to.
They just stay at our beaches year round, and they just I think they just stick around to remind us that they are still like the champions of the Big Ten inevitably, every year because Michigan, for whatever reason, Michigan can't beat them now.
Haven't been able to beat them in a decade, which is crazy. Yeah, it's coming up.
Are you surprised that nothing's happened with that coaching? I mean, speaking of, I guess that's a good transition into.
Yeah, we could talk some coaching changes in college football because there's been a number of them. Yeah, I'm a little surprised Harbaugh's still around, but on the flip side, I'm kind of not because that seems very Michigan-like.
Like, what are you gonna do? Like,
yeah,
what are you gonna get?
Yeah,
who are you gonna get better? I mean, and then you could just be like Texas and just fire them every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, Texas getting rid of Tom Herman after. I mean, what they had almost a 10-win season this year. They dominated Colorado in a bowl game. And then they fire Tom Herman and go get Steve Sarkisian.
Honestly, I was wondering if there's something else they fired him for, or if they just fired him because he didn't
win a Big 12 championship.
Some kind of within, what is he in his fourth year? Is he in his fourth year?
I think he was. Yeah.
There must be some kind of win standard they have to meet.
But the guy had 10-win seasons every year, it seemed like.
Right. Well, I mean, and you can't really. I don't think you can ever hold the first year against a coach. I mean, especially if you're installing something new. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you go winless or something, that's one.
Well, John, we were joking about it at lunch today. They fired Charlie Strong after 3 mediocre years. And then Tom Herman comes in and actually has a better performance than Charlie Strong, and they get rid of him just as quickly.
So Tom Herman, was he ever a candidate for the South Carolina job?
I don't know, but did you hear the news about that with South Carolina now?
Was Mike
Bobo is leaving.
Yeah.
Shane Beamer keeps him around.
Him as the offensive coordinator, and now he turned the tables on them by saying,
"Yes,
interesting." Where is he going?
I don't know. I didn't see that. But yeah, Bobo is going to be gone from South Carolina, which is interesting.
Maybe he just what if he just left to pursue other career interests?
He probably needs to. They were miserable. They were abysmal.
What would I say about the South Carolina job if you were I'm going to pursue other career interests, and they were going to keep you as offensive coordinator?
Let's see. Let me look up. Let me look up here what's going on with Mike Bobo. If he took a head coaching job, he is becoming the offensive coordinator at Auburn.
Interesting.
Under new head coach Brian Harsin. That's another one. Auburn getting rid of Gus Malzahn, who'd been there, 8 or 9 years at this point now. And
boy, Chad Morris has got to feel just completely bamboozled. You know, I mean,
yeah.
He leaves Clemson and really nothing has gone
right
for him.
Well, the SMU stint, he should have stayed at SMU.
Right. Because he set them up. I mean, they're still winning,
because of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the Arkansas, and then
that was an awful decision on his part.
Yeah. Because I like that, and that career path took him to Auburn, where he was under fledgling Gus Malzahn.
Yeah.
And Gus Malzahn, remember when he was such the hot name in coaching? Boy, there's been some simmer to that sizzle. I mean, now. I mean, interesting question is who's more hireable, him or Tom Herman? I'd say Tom Herman.
I would take Tom Herman. Offensive-mindedly, though, I think Malzahn's better as an offensive mind, but I think Tom Herman overall is a better hire.
Yeah.
I just think he's a better
question
coach.
Is so Brian Hartson's more of a defense, like, so they went from an offensive guy to more of a defensive guy. That's how you usually do, like, with coaching changes. So now, I guess, it'll be interesting to see Texas looks at to replace Tom Herman.
Steve Sarkisian they've already hired.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, they've already hired Sarkisian.
So they went offense, obviously.
Yeah.
With Sarkisian,
which makes sense because of the Big 12. I mean, if you don't have an offense, you're not winning games in the Big 12.
True. I mean, and the other question I have is, like, when has Texas really had a great? I mean, like, you don't really think of Texas as like an explosive offense, like, since the days of Vince Young, right? I mean, like,
the Colt McCoy days, they were pretty good offensively.
Yeah, I guess they were pretty good. Yeah.
And look, Sam Ehlinger, for all it is, I mean, if he doesn't have to go against those Lincoln Riley Oklahoma teams that have been so good,
True.
I think Sam Ehlinger could have won 3 Big 12 championships.
Mm-hmm.
But if he had some help on defense too, that would, Texas would have been better.
What game? There's been a few real head scratchers that Texas has lost over the past few years.
Oh, what was it? A couple of years ago, they lost to Kansas or something like that. You remember that, or nearly lost to Kansas?
But Texas absolutely obliterated somebody this year that was pretty good.
Well, they beat Colorado pretty badly in the bowl game.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that game wasn't even close.
It was like 64 to like 30 or something crazy.
And Colorado had one loss coming into the game or something like that. They were pretty good.
Who did Southern Cal play in the bowl game? Did they play them?
I don't know. I'd have to look here.
That's what's crazy about the whole bowl season. It's like I
don't know who played, honestly.
I feel like there were teams that were good. Like, I know Oregon played in the was it the Holiday Bowl? Is that what they were in?
Oregon, I know they played. Let me see.
Because I watched part of it.
They played Iowa State, and Iowa State absolutely destroyed them in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
No, USC did not. USC did not play in a bowl game.
Which is, they only have one loss, right? Mark, I think that's right.
1 or 2. I think 1.
Yeah.
No, maybe 2, because they ended up losing to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game.
I think. It was the Pac-12 championship. That's right. They had 2. I forgot who their other loss. May have been to Washington, maybe?
It was somebody weird, I think.
But a lot of those Pac-12 teams didn't even accept. I felt like they didn't Washington could have gone to a bowl game. I don't think they were.
Well, you had a lot of teams turn down bowl opportunities this year. I think it's just because of the weird year.
Like, if you're in the SEC and you have 2 wins, you had to turn them down. Like, LSU had to come out with a statement to say they weren't going to a bowl game.
That was a self-imposed bowl ban for handing out money to players on the sideline there in the national championship game.
And South Carolina was like, we don't have enough players that actually want to play in the bowl game.
Because half the team said they would not play for Mike Bobo, which is incredible.
And then they asked him to stay naturally as the offensive coordinator.
They asked him to stick around, but now he's headed down to the plane.
I know where I'm not wanted type thing.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, John, it's going to be it's going to be a pretty good national championship game. Regardless,
I'm looking forward to. As a football fan,
look, I don't like either team, but as a football fan, it's going to be a good one. I have no doubt. Should be a classic, and looking forward to that. Scheduled for Monday night, the 11th, if nothing changes, because right now apparently Ohio State's dealing with some COVID-related issues. So, but at the moment, it's still scheduled for Monday night.
Well, and that's a good thing about sports right now is there's a little bit of wiggle room now.
Yeah.
Obviously,
yeah.
If you had to put it off for a week, you could. It's not going to change anything.
Right.
So we know the game will get played, just don't know when.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
and for all those people that didn't think that we would make it through an entire football season, we've done it. And
we'll say we're going to make it through basketball.
Yeah, basketball season's looking good as well. We're going to make it through a complete NFL season. We're now into the postseason in the NFL. Going now with
all you naysayers out there.
Yeah, first year. What is this? The first year now with the 14-team playoff, 7 from each league, which is interesting. I didn't realize they were actually doing that, but it's going to be interesting. Got games starting Saturday in the wild card round, and then on Sunday as well. Can kind of talk about first game up on.
We got to talk about the ending of the Philadelphia Washington.
The NFC
like
East,
the greatest thing ever.
The NFC East, man.
Well, rivalries are just like so, deep in that division.
They hate each other in that division. I don't know of another division. Okay, maybe the
NFC just going to keep the Giants out of the playoffs.
Maybe the NFC North, because the Packers and the Bears hate each other. The Packers and the Vikings hate each other. Like maybe that one, but I don't know of another league or another division in the NFL that has that sense of rivalry like the NFC East does.
Okay, so the only thing I can come up with that rivals that in sports is, all right, so there's what's called, I'm going to go like soccer here, because there's what's called the handshake match between the West Germany, when it was West Germany, and Austria. So they literally kicked the game off and knew both of them, all he needed was a draw for both of them to go through to the knockout round. And they literally, the guy stood there with the ball for like 90 minutes with his foot on the ball. And so that kept like Morocco, I think, out of the second round. And so they had to change the rule because of that. But like, I feel like that's sort of what happened, not in a roundabout way. Like it kept they were so concerned with keeping the Giants out of the playoffs that in a different way, I think in a way it's horrible to say like, that kept Morocco out of it, or it kept, but in a way, it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, and Doug Peterson pulls Jalen Hurts in like the second half and puts in the third string quarterback.
Right. And like if you're the Giants, you got to wonder what they were like thinking watching this game. Like they've already got the game circled, next year.
Oh, absolutely. The first time they play, especially the first time they play in at the Meadowlands. It's going to be
that'll make intriguing when they release the NFL schedules. Like everybody's going to be like, when is that game?
Yeah. It's going to be that one's going to be an interesting one to watch. Playoffs get kicked off Saturday at 1:00. We get Indianapolis barely squeaking in. They ended up no, they did not win the division. Tennessee ended up winning the division.
Right.
But they ended up squeaking in. They have to take on Buffalo, who's one of the hottest teams right now in the AFC.
People.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Allen's having an MVP-worthy season for Buffalo.
Buffalo's a serious contender, to...
Dude, how crazy would it be if Buffalo ends up winning the whole thing? Something Jim Kelly and all those Buffalo teams in the 90s
Levy couldn't
do.
Gosh, think about the players they had. I mean,
those Buffalo teams were good.
Andre Reed,
and
like Thurman Thomas. Speaking of offensive, the K-gun offense of the early 90s, which apparently they ripped off basically from the Cincinnati Bengals, and
Parcells is ripping
that same offense.
Bill Parcells ripping people.
Right. So like, but I mean, I think maybe in Sam White that was the head coach, but like Cincinnati when they had like Boomer Esiason and but that was a neat era for the NFL. And that was an era too in which the AFC was never really competitive in the Super Bowl with the NFC. Remember?
Yeah, those early 90s, the NFC dominated, and then the 2000s came about, and it kind of switched to where the AFC.
Right when Baltimore played
the New York
Giants.
Giants. What a great Super Bowl that one was. I think 2000. Ray Lewis, that defense, that Baltimore defense.
Is it Brandon Stokely or something for the Ravens? Like the receiver their quarterback. Who was their quarterback that was like out of Fresno State? It wasn't like what was his name? I keep wanting to say Trent Dilfer. Was it Trent Dilfer?
It was Trent Dilfer.
Their quarterback.
Yes. Trent Dilfer.
Jeez. What a blast. Like the Super Bowl is great like that, and maybe more than any other sport, you can have a guy like that, like a Jeff Hofstetler or something for the Giants, like come up big in the Super Bowl or whatever. Yeah. Like you really can't say that in many other sports where there's just like some no-name guy that just like makes a name for himself.
Well, Tom Brady, I mean, that's how he did it. I mean, you think back to that first New England Super Bowl. Tom Brady was.
I mean, you think about the Bills too. I mean, like Frank Reich's a great example. I mean, I know they never won a Super Bowl, but like no one will ever forget like the Oilers game where like he comes in and like they're down like 31-0 or something, and they won the game. Like,
yeah.
Old Frank Reich, who engineered a great comeback at Maryland too against Miami.
We'll see if Buffalo can get a playoff win again at Indianapolis, who sort of stumbled down the stretch a couple of games. They ended up winning at Jacksonville, but last week, but kind of limped into the playoffs a bit coming into this year. But Buffalo, man, they've been hot, and like you said, they've been rolling over people so far this year.
What do you make of Cleveland being in the playoffs and
Cleveland the first time
not being able to practice? Like they finally make the playoffs and now they can't practice or anything.
It's like it's like the first time in like 20 years the Browns have been in the playoffs or something like that. Some weird number of years.
Nick Saban was probably like their defensive coordinator the last time they were in the playoffs.
It's been a long time, but they take on Pittsburgh Sunday night in an NFC North division rivalry. They actually just played each other this past weekend. So,
and Roethlisberger didn't play, did he? I don't think, against Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland ended up winning just
Pittsburgh
to get in.
Like speaking of just limping into the play, just they're full on crawling into the playoffs.
I'm telling you, they started off with like 11-0, and then have like lost.
They've lost like 4 in a row or something.
Let's see, they've lost 4 of their last 5.
4 of their last 5.
The one win was against Indianapolis in those last 5 games. They lost
they've been looking for reasons to fire Mike Tomlin.
They lost
this game.
These are the teams they lost to. Okay, Buffalo, that's a good loss. I'll give Buffalo. Lost to Cleveland last weekend. And then they lost to Cincinnati and Washington. Lost to Washington.
Those are 2 good losses. Quality. Yeah. I don't know what I would say. Cincinnati's a worse loss. I mean,
Yeah, obviously.
But Washington. Having said that, it's not that much worse of a loss. Than Washington. But,
the Washington football team.
I think it's just great that a team that changed their name. Is it going to be the Cleveland baseball team that makes the playoffs in the majors this year?
They are. If they go with the Cleveland baseball team, I think I might scream.
That might actually be amazing if they did that.
The Cleveland baseball club or something.
Yeah, the Cleveland baseball club.
That's so bad. Speaking
of word for why they'd be like, well, it worked for Washington.
If Washington keeps this, if Washington just decides to keep this, they should never win another football game ever again.
With just a logo-less helmet.
Yeah. And the bad thing is they get home field this week against Tampa Bay.
Well, like they have no logo at midfield, do they?
No.
They're just like I think they should just.
I think
color
it's
in
just
the
a
circle.
W. I think it's just a W.
W.
I like it. We couldn't come up with
Maybe
anything
they
this
should
year.
put just a W on their helmet.
No, but they put the numbers, like Alabama. Got the numbers on the helmet.
Such tradition we have,
Yeah. Still kept the same colored
if
uniforms.
They were the former Redskins. Wouldn't they have to change their color?
You would think, but
I mean,
John, there was a way they could have kept the name without. Well, they could have kept the Redskins name and just changed the logo to a potato, and have been the Washington Redskins, and their mascot would have been a redskin potato.
Why didn't they just do that?
I don't know.
I mean, you could have, but then like people would be like, "What's that on their helmet?" Oh, that's a potato. That's a redskin potato, naturally.
Just a potato. That'd been awesome, though.
Just a circle with like those are like the circle ones, right?
Yeah, the little circle. That'd been awesome.
You could have them like circle on one side and mash down the other.
They're like a peel.
Some of they live the peelings in some of them.
Yeah, right.
You just had them like mashed on one side, so like people would like Pittsburgh doesn't even have a logo on the other side of their helmet. So
I know, but I'm not going to get you started on that because that'll be a rant. We've had that rant before, John, of the logoless helmets.
You've got Cleveland, who at least has no logo.
Like their logo is no logo.
Right.
Their logo is their football helmet.
Which I can live with. I mean, I don't agree. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but like, it is what it is. Like, at least it's the same on both sides. You have nothing.
Yeah. Instead of Pittsburgh with one. But it's tradition, John. It's tradition.
Like, are they okay? So, like, how does the equipment manager know which side that the logo goes on?
Because you put it on the same side with every helmet.
You don't think one guy's got it wrong? Probably. I bet somebody along the line has got it wrong.
Now, that would be pretty awesome if they did that.
Because it's always got to be, I would think that the camera side of whatever, their stadium, they'd always get the side they're filming so the logo would be on. I don't know. Yeah. So you'd always know the one guy that was wrong because he wouldn't have the logo showing towards the.
It's above our pay grade there, John.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't. All I can say is Cleveland doesn't even they budget well because they don't even have to hire a guy that puts low. I mean, I guess he puts the helmets together and stuff, but that's one job he doesn't have to do.
He has to put the stripe down the middle.
Wow. At least he knows where it goes.
Yeah, right. How about this one, John? The Rams, another team that just kind of skipped into the playoffs, going up against a pretty good Seattle team.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of offensive games, you think that both these, teams can put up a lot of points.
Yeah.
For a long time this season, I mean, people were saying Russell Wilson was, the best player in the NFL for a large portion of the first half of the season. I still think that. I think that, I think their defense is a little bit better, maybe. But Aaron Donald is so dominant. What he's doing as an interior defensive lineman is pretty incredible. So I'll be interested to see, that part of it, how no one's been able to block Aaron Donald all year. So.
Yeah. And on the flip side, in Seattle, we no longer have the Legion of Boom. Their defense hasn't been that good.
Right.
The play of Russell Wilson is sort of made up for any lack of defense that they have.
Right. What was that huge receiver they have that's so good from Ole Miss?
Was it DK? DK Metcalf?
Yeah, Metcalf. God, that guy's. I mean, he, Russell Wilson can put it anywhere in that guy's vicinity, and he's going to get it. Like, he's so, like, big and strong. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not to mention, it's kind of unfair when you have speed like that. Not only is he big and powerful, but he's that fast, and it's just, I think that's the one deep threat that he kind of reminds me of the Julio Jones of the West.
Yeah, I could see that.
If I were to make a comparison, I know they're SEC guy, but I think there are a lot of similarities there between the two.
Yeah. Another guy in that division that ended up announced his retirement just a couple days ago. Larry Fitzgerald going to retire.
Gosh, and he talk about one of the Hall of Famer.
Oh, absolutely. If he's not a first ballot, and look, I know he never won a Super Bowl, never had a title. He came close one year. He came close that 1 year with Kurt Warner. But I mean, the guy has just got the greatest hands I think I've ever seen in a wide receiver. If he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, something's wrong with that.
Well, I mean, and he was a big part. He and Kurt Warner were a big part of the reason that Arizona got to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think it was 2009. But that was such a fun team to watch. And I just remember that season, Kurt Warner just kept getting obliterated and like kept getting up off the mat to and that was a fun offense to watch.
Yeah, they really kind of went back to, Kurt Warner kind of going back to his days when he was in St. Louis with that sort of
fun and gun
offense that they had. Yeah. Very similar.
Yeah, I think no doubt he should be a first ballot guy.
I think so too. I hated though that Arizona, they had a decent year, but unable to get into the playoffs this year. Interesting.
Kyler Murray was fun to watch.
He was. Yeah, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be pretty good. They're going to be a headache.
They're set up for the future pretty well. Yeah.
And talk about a fall from going from NFC champions last year. San Francisco what a terrible season.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was injuries too.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Bosa that got hurt
early, and then Garoppolo got hurt there in the middle of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a rough year for the 49ers. Interesting matchup. I'm actually looking forward to this one on Sunday, 1:00. Baltimore at Tennessee, a rematch of the really good game a year ago.
Baltimore's got that backfield, though. I mean, they got the best. I think maybe the most lethal running game of anybody in the playoff. It was J.K. Dobbins, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Ingram.
Those are three, and then
that's pretty much guys that any one of them can house it on you.
And then whenever Jim Harbaugh's feeling a little frisky, he puts in Robert Griffin III to go out there and run it a little bit.
So, essentially, that's a team that could. We were talking about them last year being the team that maybe can knock off the Chiefs. I feel like a lot of people maybe forgot about how good Baltimore is a little bit this year.
But I will say this, Lamar has struggled in the big games far early in his career. Hasn't played well in playoff games. And look, Tennessee, Derrick Henry has been tough to stop. And nobody can stop Derrick Henry. Yeah. And Tannehill's been just good enough to win some games for Tennessee. So it'll be interesting, the game in Nashville. I don't know if they're going to have fans or anything like that, but it should be an interesting one for sure. Again, a rematch from I think a wild card game last year.
Mm-hmm. That was from what I remember, it was wasn't it a high scoring game? Is that right?
I think so. And I think Derrick Henry ended up just going off, having a huge performance.
Yeah.
Lamar ended up sort of folding under the pressure in that game, and be interested to see.
And then they went on to play the Chiefs. I guess it was the next week.
And the Chiefs just absolutely that Chiefs team. Look, the Chiefs.
The funny thing about that game didn't Tennessee get out to the lead in that game?
I think they did, and Patrick Mahomes and stuff. They did that throughout the entire playoffs. The Chiefs last year in that run had to come from behind in each of those games. obviously Kansas City locked up the 1 seed, so they get the week off. I mean, they're going to be tough to beat. Anybody trying to beat them, it's going to be a tall task.
Speaking of tough backfields,
yeah, one of the toughest offenses, all around offenses with Patrick Mahomes and now you got Hilaire, and just some of the other guys, the weapons that they have on offense. Hill and Sammy Watkins on that team. It's going to be interesting.
Was it Tyreek Hill that said he could outrun a horse? Somebody said that. I want to say
fast. That dude is quick. That's crazy. And then how about Chicago at New Orleans? The Saints, man, have been dominant so far this year, and they're Chicago. They're a weird team, man. Chicago's a strange team.
Yeah, Mitch Trubisky is like the strangest quarterback to try and figure out.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's got like a 24-16 record as a quarterback is kind of crazy in his career. Somebody was saying that the other day because you wouldn't think that based on, he just really is not a guy that's like considering where he was drafted, kind of been the guy that you would take the league by storm. But yet he's always had a good defense in Chicago. I mean, they've always had.
I will say that Chicago defense is probably their best feature, but Trubisky, they're going to have to play well in order to beat Drew Brees and that Saints team because they're good. I think New Orleans can be the one team to give maybe Green Bay some problems in that NFC.
I think we could probably both agree is Green Bay's probably the favorite in the NFC. I mean,
they're the 1 seed, so you have to think they'd have to be some sort of favorite. But honestly,
I wouldn't say that they were a prohibitive favorite. I mean, I could see New Orleans getting there. Several different teams.
I honestly think
it would be shocking for me if somebody knocked off the Chiefs.
Well, I think yes. I don't think anybody in the AFC, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe if they have a good game, maybe Pittsburgh. Buffalo might. I think Buffalo is probably the actual strongest,
or Pittsburgh. But other than that,
and in the NFC, I think it's either going to be Green Bay or New Orleans that make the Super Bowl.
Just because I think Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, I think that's your NFC championship game. Honestly, is between those. If they don't play next week in whatever the division round, if that doesn't work out that way, I think that's your NFC championship match.
Especially the way New Orleans finished this season. I mean, they play really well the past few weeks of the season. And they kind of, a lot of people had picked them to be the Super Bowl favorite going into the season, but they didn't. It took them a little while to get started playing that way this year.
Yeah.
So,
be interesting.
And I want to say, was it Carolina that played them pretty well the first time this season? Obviously, it didn't go so well last week. But,
Carolina. That was a miserable year for the Panthers. I mean, I don't know what the fix is for Carolina, to be quite honest.
Did you see where Matt Rule is we're not sure that we're not ready to be all in on Teddy Bridgewater,
And Teddy actually didn't play all that bad this year.
Right. I didn't think he was I thought the
defense is the problem. Now, I will say the one bright spot on that defense has been Jeremy Chin.
Oh, yeah.
That kid is good.
The Southern Illinois FCS guy.
Yep. Saluki.
Yeah. The Saluki. Who I think
whatever that is,
coming into the season that he would be an impact player.
Yeah, that was an odd. I remember looking at that pick, going, I don't know, that's a weird pick, but it ended up working out.
Because I saw him play. Because I watched FCS football, I was like, this guy's going to, be pretty good.
And he has been. He's been a real bright spot his rookie year for Carolina. So if they can kind of build around that, I was a little disappointed in some of the defensive linemen that they got.
I never felt like the Panthers could get consistent pressure with their defensive line.
Yeah, man, McCaffrey's got to stay healthy. Although I will say this, oddly enough, Carolina played better when McCaffrey was hurt than when McCaffrey was in the lineup.
That was weird to me. I'd never really understood that why they play better, but I think it was the Tampa game where he got hurt maybe, and they actually played better with him out of the lineup in that game.
Yeah, it's weird.
Than when he was in there. So, like, I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I think it's just because they relied so much on him when he was available.
Yeah, I agree. NFL football playoffs this weekend should be a lot of fun. Wild card weekend, some really interesting matchups. John, let's switch gears a little bit. We've been talking a lot of football this first hour, but there's been some really good basketball, college basketball, right here in the Palmetto State. A lot of people not really, nationally probably aren't paying attention to just how good the teams in this state have been. You look at Clemson, they're in the top 25.
19,
Yep, just have the one loss to Virginia Tech earlier back in December. Have won a couple of big ACC games.
NC State,
Miami, two really good ACC teams. They both beat them the last couple of games. The Tigers, man, they're good, especially defensively. The pressure that they play and put on teams on the defensive side of the ball, it's incredible. And Amir Sims has he's had
are they one or two in the country in defensive.
They're up there. I know they're up defense. In the top. I know they're in the top 5 of like scoring defense, and they've gotten a lot of big play from not only their senior leaders like Sims, but you got a guy Nick Honor, the transfer coming in has been great. PJ Hall,
great shooter.
Yep, PJ Hall coming off the bench, the true freshman, has been incredible for the Tigers as well. I mean, this Clemson team, we've talked about it so far. The past couple of weeks. Of how this is really, we feel like Brad Brunell's best team that he's had. And just watching them play, I really do think that this Clemson team can make a deep run come March.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's their deepest team.
Yeah.
They're shooting the ball a little bit better, not only at the free throw line, but also from 3-point range. This is a very good shooting team. But I also think their shot selection has been really good through their first, few ACC games.
I didn't even mention, this is a team that also beat a really good Florida State in conference by double digits.
Right. Yeah. I think it was 11 points or 13
10,
points.
It was 10. It was 10.
Okay. But yeah, and that was, Florida State's a defending ACC champion.
Quote unquote.
So, yeah.
They never finished that tournament, but they're gonna crown themselves.
Yeah, well, but I mean regular season
wise, yeah.
They had won it, and then that was weird because you remember Clemson was supposed to play Florida State.
They were on the court. They were getting ready for warm-ups.
Giving the trophy literally to Florida State in the tournament. And the players were just standing there shocked.
That was when everything shut down there.
Right, and so but a really good win for Clemson. I'm toying with the idea that the Clemson's better than Duke this year. I mean, that should be I think it should be an expectation that they're better than Duke this year.
I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out January 30th. They play that game up at Cameron Indoor, but Clemson's got to be prepared.
It'll be fascinating to me, and depending on whether there's fans, at that point or not, what the line on that game will be, because I think Clemson's a better basketball team, from top to bottom than Duke, and there's not too many years that I can say that I could say that with confidence, but I'm pretty confident that I've seen both teams play. I think Clemson's better. And even on the road at Cameron Indoor, without fans, I'd give the edge to Clemson.
Yeah.
Even on the road.
I think so. I'd be interested, though, this weekend, Saturday, the Tigers, last year, they snapped the 50-game losing streak at North Carolina up in Chapel Hill. They get a chance. They go up to Chapel Hill to make it 2 in a row against the Heels in the Ding Dome. I'd be interested if the Tigers – North Carolina's not been good this year. That's not been a good season for them.
And they needed a desperation shot to beat Miami the other night. I think they're 7-4 now, if I'm not mistaken, North Carolina. So they're not, world beaters like they have been either. I mean,
no, but losses to Georgia Tech. I mean, North Carolina State's good. I'll give them that. Georgia Tech's better, but I still don't think Georgia Tech's top tier ACC basketball.
Right. Georgia Tech's decent. I would say Clemson's in that top tier right now. I'd include Virginia Tech, maybe Louisville's, I think, maybe the dividing line. Below Louisville, I think is probably, the teams that aren't going to be as good this year. I think Virginia is very good, obviously. Wake Forest, I think, is a team you watch out for.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of their game with Virginia last night. Steve Forbes in his first year at Wake Forest. I think they're going to finish. Obviously, they're picked 15th or last in the ACC. They're going to finish higher than that.
I mean, what's going on with the Cuse, man? Syracuse felt like hasn't been very good this season. And normally they're pretty good at basketball. Boeheim normally has that team rolling, but they've not been very good either.
And really, I mean, I didn't think they were that great last year. I think Virginia Tech's pretty good.
Honestly, I don't think Syracuse has been all that great since they joined the ACC in basketball.
No,
they dominated. Really. They dominated the Big East for a long time, and then
they haven't been the program they were since joining the ACC. Certainly think you can say that. Whereas, like a program like maybe Louisville's actually probably benefited, from being in the ACC. Now I realize that they took that national championship away from them when they won it a few years ago, because they've done a lot of sketchy things with their basketball program, but we won't go into details. But yeah, I would say overall they probably benefited from being in the ACC, whereas maybe Syracuse has seen their program plateau off a little bit since joining the ACC. And Jim Boeheim, you remember he was the one that came out and said that he didn't want Syracuse to leave the Big East.
Yeah. And now you could see why. I mean, when you have to go up against North Carolina and Duke every year in the ACC, I mean that's a tough task.
And plus travel. I mean, it's gonna be a nightmare to travel from Syracuse to Durham, North Carolina. Or Clemson, South Carolina.
Yeah, wherever. That is tough. Down in Columbia, the Gamecocks, they've only played 5 games all season, 1 SEC game. They are undefeated, though. They beat Texas A&M in the SEC play. But other than that, I mean, they've played 5 games.
It's kind of like the Citadel. Citadel's played like 7 games, and I feel like the Citadel has not played since before Christmas. And they just keep having games postponed. But on the flip side of it, at least they're still undefeated.
7-0. They haven't played a SoCon game with the Citadel. 7-0.
So the Bulldogs still waiting to play that elusive. I think they have it next week against East Tennessee State now, maybe. I can't remember. They're getting games canceled
at the moment, they have a game with Chattanooga scheduled for Saturday.
Okay.
Unless it hasn't been unless it's been canceled, but according to ESPN,
I'm pretty sure that one's still on.
Yeah, according to ESPN, it's not been canceled or postponed. Yeah, because they got Chattanooga, then they got Furman next week.
Okay.
And then VMI.
Yeah, that's right. They Furman plays at Citadel next Wednesday. Maybe.
Yes, the 13th.
So that'll be interesting. Furman probably won't have a lot of film to go on.
and speaking of the Paladins, they had those 3 games where they lost to Alabama and Winthrop. Cincinnati was 3 straight losses that they ended up taking.
I'm gonna say, I'm not sure that Furman didn't play the toughest non-conference schedule. I know they played some non-Division I schools, but those looking at what Alabama's done now, and I'm not sure. Alabama went to Tennessee and won, the SEC favorite. Alabama beat Florida the other night by double digits. I'm not so sure that I mean, if they could have that game back now with Alabama, Alabama's probably NCAA tournament.
I mean, they led most of the game. They should probably won that game. They let it slip away late.
Winthrop's still probably going to go unbeaten.
Yeah, Winthrop's really good. Look, Winthrop, they're very good in that Big South Conference. Cincinnati, is not a bad loss either.
I know they wish they probably have played better. That might be their worst game. Just coming out of onto the floor, not being ready to play. But you look at it now, I mean, this conference race is going to be crazy because, Wofford goes on the road and beats Mercer by 17 last week. Furman beat a previously unbeaten Chattanooga team.
Yep. And
Chattanooga loses that game and then turns around and goes to VMI and loses. And then
Furman just wrecked Chattanooga, didn't they?
Right. They wrecked their season. I mean,
no, there's still a lot to play for, but
there's legitimately 7 teams that are pretty good. I mean, maybe 8.
Well, look, VMI's not off to a bad start themselves.
VMI's not bad. They're actually, I think everybody has it. Does everybody have a winning record?
No. Samford is 5-5. They're even.
That's right. Okay, they were 5-5.
Other than that, everybody's over 500. Now in conference play, you've got Chattanooga and Samford, Western and Mercer that are all have losing records. The Citadel's sitting there at 0-0 because
they're still 500 in conference play.
Yeah. Or 100, depending on how you look at it.
Well, they're still looking to break their conference losing streak.
Yeah. And they'll have to try to do it against Chattanooga Saturday.
Watch them do it now.
Chattanooga
and Citadel win that game.
Chattanooga and Furman back-to-back games. It's incredible.
I mean, that would be like, like Citadel beats Chattanooga. It would be like, well, everybody just kept canceling on us, so we just finally figured out that Chattanooga. We just started watching their film like 2 weeks ago.
How about the big surprise to me is UNC Greensboro. They're 6-4, 1-1 in conference play, but they lost to ETSU a couple days ago, and then turned right around and beat
ETSU. Actually figured out putting the ball in the basket was the key to the game, and so now they've all of a sudden figured out how to score.
Yeah. They dropped 71.
Now they're kind of dangerous. I mean,
but then Greensboro turns around and beats Wofford,
and then and scores 49 points and a half. And there's been games this year where they've struggled to score 49 in a game. So it's going to be crazy. That was one of the great things about basketball is when teams start to figure it out, they're actually Greensboro and ETSU are going to be good by the time conference tournament gets here.
Yeah.
But
it's
funny to watch these teams try to figure it out and then they finally get it. And then it's kind of cool because in the second half, it was like a light flipped on for UNC Greensboro yesterday, where in other games this year, you're just like, this is not the team that people were saying they were going to be, picked to win the conference potentially. But when they get it going defensively and it leads to good offense, I think it starts to take a lot of pressure off them offensively, and they take better shots. So that's my uncoaching analysis of why they played well yesterday.
The SoCon basketball season off to an interesting start already. How about let's take a trip just around college basketball as a whole tonight? How about Colorado beating Oregon at home? And it's a very good Oregon basketball team, and the Buffs.
Is it at Oregon's court that has a forest on it?
No. This was in Boulder. The game was in Boulder.
Have you ever seen that court? Though?
It's yellow with trees.
There's
painted on
it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird design.
Yeah.
But hey, whatever.
Pac-12.
Whatever floats your boat.
I'm sure Bill Walton's doing that game.
Yeah. It was incredible.
He always asks it like, "Have you ever been to Columbia, South Carolina?" He was literally broadcasting the Southern Cal game the other night. I forgot. They may have been playing like Stanford or somebody.
My absolute favorite.
He was talking about the guy that transferred there, Chavez Goodwin from Wofford, who was from Columbia. Have you ever been to Columbia, South Carolina? And the guy was like, "Yeah." It's a great place down there.
My favorite though was this is the Maui Invitational from Asheville.
Brought to you by, it's like
Camping World.
Outfitters or something. Yeah, Camping World. Yeah. Camping World. Because, the Camping World, you couldn't have that in Maui. You couldn't have a camping Maui in Maui. You have to have that in Asheville. I'm like,
Bill Walton, national treasure. Second half right now. In this Big Ten matchup, Iowa continuing to dominate people as they're beating.
Give it to Luka Garza.
Dude, that kid's good, man. That kid is so good. They're beating up on Maryland pretty badly right now. Close game.
Who doesn't beat up on Maryland pretty badly these days?
Which is bad because Maryland
speaking of a conference shift,
used to
nothing. Maryland's basketball program.
Maryland used to be good at basketball when they were in the ACC.
They were in the ACC, and then they go off flirting with the Big Ten, and then next thing you know, they're losing to everybody.
Yeah, it's incredible. Tight game in the Big Ten at halftime. Wisconsin with a 5-point lead over the Hoosiers. Right now, you got BYU going up against Gonzaga tonight. That'll be an interesting one. Illinois,
Two of the better mid-major programs in the country, BYU, Gonzaga.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a good one. I'll be interested to see that one. Colorado State playing UNLV tonight.
Colorado State, UNLV. The running Rebs.
I say that because Nico Medved, the former Furman coach, who's off to a 6-2 start as head coach of the Rams this year. I think he's in his, third year?
Off to a great start.
So keep an eye on them. They won 20 last year. So
how about this? Sacred Heart is currently beating Merrimack.
Wow.
In the
Merrimack.
in the NEC.
I think Merrimack in New Jersey. Is that right?
I think so. The NEC.
Who is New Jersey Institute of Technology playing tonight?
I don't know.
The Najit.
Take a look at the see. I'm trying to find some of these just weird random games. There's always a few.
There are a lot of those in basketball these days. Like Carver Bible College might have a game tonight.
No, but you got Wagner versus Fairleigh Dickinson. That's an interesting NEC matchup.
Oh, Wagner. Yeah.
Wagner and Fairleigh Dickinson.
Wagner is the Seahawks, I think. The Wagner Seahawks. And I'm not sure what is Fairleigh Dickinson's mascot?
Looks like a knight. I think it's a knight.
Okay.
Crusaders. Yeah. Fairleigh Dickinson. You mentioned a couple of games. What was it? Wofford played last night, right? Wofford and
Wofford and UNC Greensboro.
You had Baylor and Oklahoma play last night. Baylor continuing to.
Baylor might be the best team in the nation.
I mean, they're good.
They might be. Yeah, they. I mean, and they're not just. They're just good, man. That's a basketball school.
Michigan crushed Minnesota last night.
Michigan is a team. I think Michigan might be a team that's a dark horse national championship. Michigan's a basketball school now.
Yeah, apparently. Louisville beating Virginia Tech last night. Also, Duke had to pull out a gutsy win, 1 point over Boston College.
Ooh, the Eagles.
Boston College.
I mean, whenever you're having to pull wins like that out against Boston College and you're Duke and basketball, it's not a good thing.
John, check this score out here in the SEC. Nobody plays defense in the SEC apparently in basketball. LSU beat Georgia 94-92.
Ooh. Hey, I mean, good. Georgia's not
They're better. They're 7-2 now. They're a lot better. They used to be the laughingstock of the
Tom
SEC.
Crean, the coach down there, I think. Tommy Crean, former Indiana coach. Marquette coach as well.
Nichols got a win last night.
Nicholls State?
Just Nichols. No Nichols State anymore.
No Nicholls State anymore.
Yeah, just Nichols.
Please do not refer to us as NSU or Nicholls State.
Just Nichols.
Down there in Thibodaux, Louisiana.
That's right.
Nichols. And did they get a Southland win? Let me guess. Did they play the Southeast Louisiana Lions?
I don't remember. I don't know now.
Sam Houston State.
Probably one of those. Probably see.
It wasn't Stephen F. Austin. They're like they're like the gold standard in Southland basketball.
Well, John, we're off to a good start right now. Basketball, right in the middle of we're in the middle of the thick of things now with college basketball. Yeah, conference play really ramping up. Should be fun in both the ACC and the Southern Conference coming down the stretch, and everything in both of those conferences. It's going to be a great 2 months of basketball in both of those leagues until we get to the tournaments. Hopefully we have they did make the announcement this week that the entirety of the NCAA tournament was going to be played and held in Indianapolis. They're going to do the whole thing in Indy this year.
Wouldn't you be like the school that would like to play at Butler? The Hinkle Fieldhouse where Hoosiers was filmed.
Yeah, I wonder where I guess they'll play games there, maybe at the Pacers facility. I don't know where all
6 different locations in the state of Louisiana.
You mean Indiana? You mean Indiana?
Right. I think. And there's like 18 schools in Indianapolis, so it could very well be Indianapolis, but I think it's in the state of Indiana.
Okay, just the state as a whole.
Right.
But I think the Final Four is in Indy.
Right. They're going to try. They're keeping everyone, try to keep them within a good, pretty good distance of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the schools are that far away. I know IUPUI and there's a bunch of schools right there. It's like a glut of schools right in the Indianapolis area.
IUPUI.
And there's IUPUI Fort Wayne, the Mastodons. In case you were scoring at home.
I'm telling you, man, we could do a whole show on weird college mascots.
The Mastodons is one of my favorites. Yeah. Got to be honest. I think IUPUI is the Jaguars.
I still like, you got the boll weevils down in was that Arkansas? Monticello. Yeah, Arkansas Monticello.
You got Pine Bluff. I'm not sure.
Hey, you see at Santa Barbara, the banana slugs. That's a great mascot.
Never want to count them out of your bracket. In fact, I think that's where Jim Rome went. Either went there or Santa Cruz. I can't remember. Anyway,
the banana slugs. And then we're only 7 or 8 weeks from FCS football.
Mm-hmm.
SoCon football will be in February, so we're getting closer to
Western Carolina or Furman play over here in the shadows of Paris Mountain here at Paladin Stadium.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. Might have to make a trip over to Travelers Rest for that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Be a great one.
I don't know though if we can let you back in after the Citadel last year.
Hey, well, okay. At least they're playing Western. I mean, no offense to Western Carolina, but
I've seen Western come over there, and probably you were in the stands a lot.
No, because when I was a kid, Furman was those were the good days of Ingle Martin.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They didn't lose to. Well, they did, but that was at Western. That was a game where Ingle threw 5 interceptions and still almost won. I don't know if that's an indictment of Western or.
Sounds about right. About right. But looking forward to that, and looking forward to the national championship game. Disappointed Clemson wasn't able to make it this year, but it still should be a pretty good game between Alabama and Ohio State, and then NFL playoff action this weekend. So still got plenty of sports going on in the middle of the NBA season right now. I haven't really been paying attention much to NBA basketball, but we're right in the thick of it now and getting going with that.
All I know is that Miami has some really cool jerseys, the Miami Vice jerseys.
Oh, yeah. And Golden State apparently is one of the worst teams in the league now again. So that's
But
good.
like Curry can go for 62, and still win a game like by himself. So.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
All right, John. Well, it's been a fun one. We'll get back on Sunday. We'll kind of talk again, maybe, or if you want to go, if you want to get on Sunday, maybe we can talk NFL football. Kind of recap the playoff.
We'll look at the playoffs, the wild card stuff.
Yeah, wild card stuff, and we can kind of maybe talk a little bit more about national championship games, things like that.
Go over the basketball.
Yeah, basketball stuff as well. So
everybody plays. I think Clemson and Furman play Saturday.
Yeah, so we'll have some stuff to talk about Sunday. So we'll get back at it on then. Well, this has been a lot of fun, John. So we'll talk to each other on Sunday then.
Sounds good, man.
All right, this has been another episode of The Spread. Thanks for listening to the Spread Podcast here on Podbean. Head on over to thespreadfootball.com and check out all of our weekly articles and catch replays of each show on the podcast page. Also, head on over to social media and follow us on Facebook at The Spread with Cameron Tarrant and on Twitter at The Spread Podcast. We'll catch you next time.